Hi, it's Deborah. I have had a pretty powerful week, a lot of introspection, and I've been thinking about this channel thing that the Lord has asked me to do. And I've had a few people ask me some questions this week that have got me to thinking as far as why I approach the world the way I approach the world. I think I'm just going to try to explain that to you by giving you a couple scenarios of things that have happened in my life. I know you don't really know me. Most of you don't really know me. And so you probably don't, if you don't really know me, then you don't know kind of my background and what I've come from and come through. And I'm going to try to sum that up for you. There have been a few things that happened in my life. You know, when I was really young, I was very gullible and naive. I was also, not to say that I'm not still gullible and naive. I'm not going to say that I'm not that, okay? I'm not rejecting that about myself. I have no idea what I'm gullible about. But I know what I have been naive about. And when I was younger, I was just a normal little girl. But because I was undefined, I was very undefined, and I didn't have a good strong grip on the roots of biblical understanding. And that being undefined and naive kind of draws darkness to you. And so I would say that I had some inappropriate things, you know, in my life as a young person that I was drawn to and were drawn to me. I'll just say that, one or the other. And that brought painful scenarios into my childhood. Then and yet I felt the Lord whisper to me and try to help me. I didn't listen, especially when I was a young teen. I didn't listen, but I would feel Him trying to communicate with me. I was married. I got married when I was 19 to a man who is since deceased. He was clean the last time for about 5 years, and he overdosed. Drugs had a grip on him while we were married. He was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And it was, he would be violent and unpredictable depending on the drugs that he was on. But the reason I was with him is because I was just one screwed up chick, you know. And I remembered, I've been talking to the Lord a lot the last few weeks. You know, I've been camping. I went out and spent a week for Sukkot with about 500 other people, the Feast of Tabernacles, which you find in Leviticus 23 and also Numbers, and Zephaniah or Zechariah. I don't know. I'll find it. Either way, we're going to do it during the 1,000-year reign. If we're here on the planet then with the Lord, whoever's here is going to be doing the Feast of Tabernacles. So I'm just practicing, right? And trying to draw near anything He loves, anything He says that, you know, that He's in. I want to be in it. I want to take part in it. It's part of the intimacy to lean in. So during this time, I've been contemplating the times in my life that why it is that my faith is so strengthening to me. And one of the times was, I remember I was this young married person. I had made some really bad choices as a young woman. I was living in a house, and I was looking out the window, and it had been a year which I had made decisions as a 20-something-year-old that were bad, and then they led to worse decisions. And I had just never dreamed that I would allow myself to be in that predicament. It was snowing outside. I was standing looking out the window at my front door, smoking a cigarette and watching the snow fall. It was my day off. And I don't even remember what awful things had happened because my life was a series of traumatic things at that time in my life. I remember standing and looking out the window of that house at the falling snow and wondering, I was probably 21 or 20. I think I was 21. I was wondering how I had gotten there. I was wondering how I had gotten so far from what I used to understand when I was very young. I wondered how I had gotten there. I was looking out the window and tears were rolling down my face, just a little at a time. And I was thinking about how far away I was and that I could never go back. That I could never go back. I had done too many things and allowed myself to stray too far. I'd made my bed and then I had to lie in it. Someone used to say that, you paint a red wagon, you're going to pull a red wagon. And that's what I understood. That's what I thought life was. You made your mess and there you sat. And I was in a mess. And I remembered, I was just staring out the window. And I felt the Lord. I felt the Lord whisper to me. I felt the Lord whisper to me. It was years before I had the courage. Well, he put me in a predicament and he pushed me up against the wall. I had to make a decision. But I felt so alone and so far away. And I felt him beckoning to me. There were several instances where I tried to pray and I felt like he was saying, "You're not talking to me. I can't hear you because of your sin." And that's what the scripture says, that when we sin, and sin is the transgression of the law. The law is the Torah, first 5 books of Moses. The definition, according to the Word of God, for sin is transgression of the law. See, the law of the Lord is perfect, and it converts the soul. The testimonies of the Lord are sure, and you can't go against them. And when you do, it separates you. But the minute you repent, cry out to Him, He hears you. I was married up until I was legally married. Of course, we were separated off and on for, I don't even know. I was probably separated more than I was together because of the abuses and because of the lies and the thefts and the knives to your throat and holes in the walls and all those things. That life was awful. It was pathetic. It was sad, but it's so far behind me now. People don't see it when they look at me, but all of those things that I went through in my life. So I think legally I was 27 when the divorce went through. Got married when I was 19, but we were either way. So that was when I was 27. I was a single mom, and my son and I got married when my son was 2.5 years old. I got married, and when I was married for 5 years, I was pregnant, and it was at that time that something happened, and my life was wrecked, and I was devastated. Everything I thought I understood to be true wasn't exactly what I thought, and it was so hard. I was terrified. I was devastated. I was betrayed, all those things that you've probably felt. If not, then you can't know. You can't now. It had just come about. It was ugly. And I was weeping. Would wake up in the morning and realize what my life reality was and would just weep uncontrollably. And then I'd get it together and function a little bit, and then I would weep uncontrollably again, you know. So I was laying on the bed, and I had my arms, I just kind of had my arms around myself, and I had one, I was face down, and I had my hand here. And I was just weeping and crying out to the Lord and saying, how can I survive? How can I survive with this kind of pain and, emotional distress? How can I be a mom? I can't do this. I can't do this. I cannot. I can't live. I can't live. And I was weeping. And I thought that someone had come in the room and put their arm around me and put their hand over my hand while I was weeping. But I was grieving so much, I didn't lift my head up. I didn't lift my head up. I just continued to weep. And that arm around me continued to hold me tight and hold on to my hand. And I just felt this flooding comfort over me. And I began to calm, and I felt the Lord's presence. I looked up through my tears and no one was there, but I felt this hand holding onto my hand, and I felt this arm around me. And I felt the Lord's presence, and I knew it was Him. I knew it was Him. He's just there with me, I hadn't experienced such a tangible presence of the Lord ever before. And now, some people, when I tell them, like, look, you're irresistible to God when you're going through that much pain and that much hurt. And they may not understand what I'm saying, but it's true. When you cry out to the Lord in places of your deepest distress, when you really cry out to Him, deep calls to deep. That was a moment that defined my understanding. Another moment that I happen to remember because on Rosh Hashanah, my husband and I went up. We like to do something that you cast your bread upon the waters. Basically, it's something that people will do on the day of blowing, the day of trumpets, which is Rosh Hashanah. At some point, we took some bread and we sat by the river, and we went up to Cades Cove in the Smoky Mountains, and there's a water there in a picnic area. And where he had parked, ironically, we took our bread and wadded it up in little pieces and sat there and contemplated the last year and things we want to let go, give it to the Lord, and ask Him to just carry it away. And we do it individually, but together. And my husband and I threw our pieces of bread in the water and just said some prayers. And then we just did different things to honor the day and to draw near to the Lord on His day. While I was up there, I looked over and where my husband had parked the car, and there was no one around. And the Lord reminded me on Rosh Hashanah that was the spot. It was it was November of 2004. And my brother, who is my baby brother, he's 8 years younger than me, so he was 32 at the time, and he was in the hospital. He had this, it's called PSC. It's the big long name for an autoimmune disorder. Your body has an inflammatory response, kind of like endometriosis, but with the digestive system, best I can understand. He was dying. He was on a liver transplant list for years and had a pager, and the last few years have been really hard for him. And he was dying. Had been at the hospital, Blunt Memorial. This was before we went to Vanderbilt. Later, we were there for 2 weeks, waiting on a transplant that didn't come in time to save his life, a liver transplant. So I had been at the hospital all day. I think that was the morning that I had been taking my aunt down to my mom's. He'd been in the hospital and had gotten out of the hospital and gone home, and he was asleep, and I was on my way to my mom's house taking my aunt because she wanted to visit with him. He'd been in the hospital for so long. We all knew that we were in a place of, we were walking close to, we were in the valley of the shadow of death. So I'd gone and got my aunt to take her to visit my brother while he was home. And my mom had called me panicking that morning. Are you almost here? I can't get him to respond. She called 911. It was like that. So Mom and I followed the ambulance back to the hospital. And I had been there with him during the day. And it was hard being positive and trying to support him, knowing how close we were to the possibility that ended up happening. So I called my husband, and he was oblivious to what I had experienced during the day. And he was like, when we be home? And he just wasn't connecting with me at all, and that he just didn't get. I was unable to express to him on the phone what was going on inside me. And I left the hospital and got in the car and started driving and screaming and beating on the steering wheel, which is something that I have done many times in my life. If you've passed me and I'm flying and banging on the steering wheel and my mouth is open, chances are I'm screaming to God. I was just driving and screaming and crying. And I realized at some point that I had driven up to the mountains, and I ended up writing about it later on, because I write about things. But I finally pulled in. I just pulled in, and I had grown up going with my brother and my family to the Cades Cove area, and going to the place where we picnicked, next to the river. And I had just parked there, and I got out, and it was dusk, and it was drizzling the rain. And I had been crying and screaming and crying and screaming and crying and screaming. And I got out of my car, and I was still talking to the Lord, and I was all alone. And I stood there crying and begging God. I love my brother a lot. He was the one that got me, out of everybody. I'm a piece of work, and he understood, he understood me. And I was afraid to lose him, because not many people get you, And I had my face up, and the water was just, I couldn't tell what was my tears and what was the rain. I was drenched. And I just eventually the sun was down completely, and I was standing there just quiet. I had been quieted because I felt the presence of God. He just fell and was with me. I didn't hear, it's going to be okay. I didn't hear, I can't tell you that I understood anything from God other than just He was there. And after a while, it was a long while, I'd been standing there just in the dark without making a noise. I got back in the car and sat in the car. When I started the car and started driving, there were deer that had been around me that I saw when I began. They froze when my lights came on, and hit them. But I remember the drive home. I was going to be able to handle whatever came, and He was with me. I don't know why. I would, like I said, I know most of you people that have been contacting me. You don't know me. But if there's anything at all that I can say that is of value on this, it would be that God is with us when we are struggling. He is near to the brokenhearted. He is with us always, even to the end. So I'm not concerned about that. I know He's with me. My worries and concerns, the things I pray about, I guess, are my husband and my sons and my daughter-in-laws and my grandchildren and my family and friends. It's down to it. We're down to it. We're down to make your decisions and set your eternity. That's what we're down to. We have a great opportunity to minister to each other. But we have great opportunity to blow it big time by sticking our head in the sand. So I suppose that what this video has been about is the Lord has proven Himself to be very faithful, to be near me, to strengthen me, to guide me. He does not leave or forsake us. We leave and forsake Him and each other, but He doesn't. He's perfect in that. And if He allows things to get ugly, which He has in my life, allowed people to make horrible decisions and wound me. He's allowed death to come and take from me. He's allowed me to make awful decisions and distance myself from Him. But all the while working to reconcile and redeem me from it. He's at work. He is to be trusted. And all we got to do is get the sin out of the way by confessing and asking Him to hear us and call on Him, and He'll answer. Draw near to Him, and He'll draw near to you.